Welcome back, everybody, to Business Talk, where we sit down with entrepreneurs and community leaders to bring you real stories, real insight, and real takeaways you can use today. Today, I'm joined with Rick Graves. He actually is the owner of HR Doctors. How you doing, Rick?
Good morning, Didier. Good to talk with you this morning. I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for asking. So, listeners, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you have any questions for Rick, please feel free to leave a comment down below. So, with that being said, we're going to kind of dive in and talk a little bit about HR and the importance of payroll. Rick is an expert in his field. I'll let him go ahead and talk a little bit about himself. So let's start with that. Rick, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get involved with your business as it stands today?
Okay, so I was a business owner for 25 years up in New England. I had a computer services company where we copied software for our clients, and I had 18 employees in my company, and I was kind of in charge of all the operations, including HR, along with everything else, the purchasing and payroll and everything else. And I came to learn that's one piece of your duties as a business owner. They're really tough to keep up with all the rules and the time that it takes and everything else. So I learned early on that's a great thing to outsource. So that's what I did, and I got into this business when we sold our company. I moved here to Florida from New England, and I ran into a company that I knew here, and they said, "We just like your story that you have used our services, and we'd like you to go out and rep us." Well, that company eventually got bought up. And I decided just to be kind of an independent broker. So I represent several companies that are known as PEOs, professional employer organizations, and they do full outsourced HR work for their clients. So if you think ADP and Paychex, those are the two 800-pound gorillas of the business. But I work with smaller companies here in Florida, and I match them up with small business owners. Really, a really sweet spot is probably 5 to 20 employees. I can certainly help a 1 or 2 or 3 person company as well, or a larger company if they don't want to have their own full-time HR person. So that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. There are many questions that I'm sure our listeners would want to know about. One is, many people think payroll is just about paying employees on time. Can you explain the payroll management, and is it much more complex than people think?
Yeah, so there are some more things to payroll than just getting those checks out to your employees. Payroll companies will use the information in payroll to track a bunch of other things like your benefits, right? So say if you have to make a copay for insurance, or you're putting money into a 401k or other retirement plan, all that stuff gets tracked through payroll. So it's great to have somebody doing that work for you instead of all the minute detail of keeping this spreadsheet and that spreadsheet of all the checks you have to write and where they have to go and whose account they go to. Another good reason for using a payroll service, it helps you understand your cash flow. I mean, normally payroll is a very major expense in a small company, so this will help you understand when you're going to need cash and how much cash you're going to need. Cash flow is a really critical part of any small business. For example, if you have, say, a construction company, maybe you're building a building, you need to pay your employees every couple of weeks or week or whatever it is, but you don't get paid until the project is done. So you may need to set up a line of credit with your bank or find some other outside sourcing. There are companies that will do short-term financing of payroll. So you have to think about a lot of things, not just getting those checks out.
Interesting. So when you say not just getting those checks out, are there any common payroll mistakes that businesses make?
Yes, so there are some you can make that can get you in trouble. One of them that I stepped on one time is not filing this form called a 941. And what that is a form you send into the IRS, and it's a summary of all the payments you've made for withholding and Social Security and other FICA stuff. And depending on the size of your company, you have to do that monthly or quarterly. So if you're not using QuickBooks or some kind of program that will calculate that for you, or if you're not using an outside service, it's very easy to miscalculate the deductions. It's very easy to go down those tax tables and go to a wrong column or row. And they change all the time. Every year, that's a new set of tax tables. And then you have to Also pay good attention. If you give somebody a raise, that may take them from one level of taxation to another. So there's all these little things you can step on. But I think the biggest problem I see people run into is that they keep people on as 1099 for way too long. So when you start a business, you don't want to get into the complicated things of doing this and doing that. And a lot of people tend to just pay people as a 1099. You can probably get away with that quite a bit. I don't recommend it to people. Should you happen to get audited, the IRS will identify that 1099 person as an independent contractor. And kind of the rule of thumb is that person has their own business and EIN number. That person does whatever they do for you for other people as well. And you are not telling them, when and where to be to do that, within certain limitations, because they use those things as that's a definition of an employee, and you should be paying your proper taxes. So as an employer, you're required to pay 7.65% of the payroll. Some of that's for Social Security, some of that's for Medicare. And the employee also pays 7.65%. So that's an extra expense that people don't want to get into. However, if you skip over it and you keep people as a 1099 too long, first of all, you expose yourself to a little bit of potential problems. And also, you're cheating your employees a little bit. The value of their Social Security account is not growing. Especially for young people who will be in the workforce for a long time. They need to build that up so they have a good retirement at the end. And last but not least, you're following the law when you do that. Those are important. Yeah. So I think, the not filing things on time and, taking advantage of the 1099 thing for too long. And I always advise people to look at it carefully, keep themselves out of trouble.
Rick, this is all great information, and I'm sure a lot of people are not familiar with the process. And again, when you're looking at a payroll HR consultant like yourself, how does that fit into the bigger picture of operations and human resources?
So one thing it'll do, it'll make sure that your banking is set up for smooth operation, so that you can give your payroll provider access to your banking account, so they can automatically put it into your employees' bank accounts. And they can also recommend best practices for you around like holidays, when you should pay, and they would probably recommend that you set up a regular pay schedule so that people know when to expect to be paid. I always recommend to people that they pay either weekly or bi-weekly. A lot of companies like to pay semi-monthly, and I did that myself for a while. And the problem I ran into is that you get to the end, and maybe you have some of your people are part-time, they're not a salary, so you don't know exactly what they're going to make. And if your pay period cuts off before the check is ready, then you give them a little extra or not enough. So you're always making up a couple of hours here or there, or taking away a couple of hours somewhere else. So I try to steer people away from semi-monthly. A lot of professional businesses, like high income businesses, like maybe medical or lawyers or something, kind of like that. But the regular person, needs to know when the money's going to be in the bank so that they can pay their mortgage and pay their grocery bill or pay their rent or, car payment, whatever they have to do. They know that, on such and such a Thursday, the money's going to be in the bank for them. So that's really helpful to your employees.
And I think it's so important as a business owner to understand the process itself, correct?
Yes, it is. It's so easy to, make a mistake, and you can actually alienate your employees, right? So they have, like I just mentioned, they have these expectations to be paid. You have unhappy employees. That's not really a good thing. They're going to, badmouth you to maybe your customers. They're going to think about going to your competition and work for them and take some trade secrets with them. I think I describe payroll as HR 101. It's the main thing everybody knows that they have to do. It's HR 101. So the way you do it, make sure it fits into your plans for growth. Make sure that what you do helps you keep employees and keep everything operating smoothly every week.
Love that. As we finish up here, is there anything that kind of stands out that you come across all the time from your clients that they did not know about, besides all the things, all the value information that you've already provided? Anything else that stands out that you want to share?
Not particularly payroll related, because payroll's been a thing that's been around for a long time, and a lot of people have learned about things over the course of time. But I also do, a little bit more HR stuff. So I just like to maybe do a little self plug that I have developed an HR audit that covers payroll and other areas. So I will sit down with somebody and just go through this checklist and say, how do you do this thing? How do you do that thing? It's some things you might not think of, related. Like I'll ask people about their exit plan. Like, you're going to leave your business someday. Everybody says, well, I'm going to leave it to my kids. Well, your kids may not be interested. Somebody might walk through the door and offer you an outrageous amount of money that, you weren't planning on getting, and you want to go. You may get sick, or God forbid, you may pass away. And if if you're a good person, you're going to worry about your employees and how you're going to leave things behind for them in terms of their retirement plans and a place to go to work and all that. So payroll is, as I just mentioned, HR 101, but there's a lot more to build on top.
Wow, very good point. So this is great information. Definitely appreciate you being a guest on our podcast. And if you don't mind, how can our listeners get a hold of you? Can you provide a phone number and a website?
Sure. My website is hr-drs.com. HR doctor is all scrunched up, abbreviated, hr-drs.com. The direct line is area code 407-984-5857. My email is rgraves@hr-drs.com.
Rick, thank you so much for being a guest and sharing your valuable insight on your business. So we definitely appreciate you having.
All right, Didier, I so much appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. This has been a great pleasure for me, and I look forward to having some future collaboration.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Take care.